Well, hello there. I figured it's about time to give you another updated 2015 NFL mock draft. If you check out the description box down below, you will see my most recent updated two-round version. If I feel froggy or frisky in the future, next time I might do a three-round one, or I might just keep it 2 rounds for the time being. A couple of things to note before I talk about the actual mock draft down below itself. Number one, I'm operating under the assumption that anybody that can declare for the 2015 NFL draft is going to declare. So if you see like Connor Cook in my mock draft, and you're like, well, he said he's coming back next year. Okay, there's still plenty of time for him to change his mind. Until I see it, I don't believe it type of thing. And I just do it for one of these what if scenarios. And again, this is what if scenarios. We are still in the middle of November, and the draft isn't until next April. That's over 6 months away. So why not figure out what could happen based off of potential scenarios? Also, it is still over 6 months away to next year's NFL draft. Don't take it too damn seriously. It's a mock. It's a way to give you an idea. Next thing, to those of you that shit on my mocks or say that my mocks are usually bad, I say number one, up yours. Number two, I do have a history of being able to predict players moving up or down draft boards. So, you might not agree with me right now in terms of where I might have certain players going and whether they're heading up or down draft boards, but there's a lot of time left in the draft process. So, if you know so much better, then let me see your mock drafts. And I guarantee in a lot of your cases, they will be the shits. Just telling you that simple. I'm not saying mine are great at this point in time because there's still a lot of these players that I have to watch a lot more of before I give full and complete player grades and evaluations to. But, I see some of the shit that some people say sometimes and I'm like, oh, my stuff's bad. I can only imagine how drizzling crappy yours is. Okay, with that said, let's talk about this updated mock draft. Now, first off, big change you'll see at the top is I have the Raiders taking Amari Cooper from Alabama, number one. Now, I'm doing this in part because I'm not doing like a trade down scenario where like the Raiders would maybe trade down to where the Jets were at number 4 to take Cooper. Although I would doubt that the Raiders would spend the number 1 overall pick on Amari Cooper. They would maybe try to trade down. Secondly, I'm operating under the assumption in this particular scenario that the Raiders do believe in Derek Carr and that they want to build around him. And if they want to build around him, taking somebody like a Leonard Williams from USC is not the way to do it. That's what dumb dick organizations would do. If you're going to pass on Mariota or Winston because you believe in Derek Carr, then you best damn well better do everything you possibly can to help out Derek Carr. When you look at the talent around Derek Carr on the offensive side of the ball in Oakland, it's basically non-existent. You got to get him something. You got to get him weapons. You got to get him help. You got to get him protection. Well, Amari Cooper is about as good of a weapon in this draft as you can get. So there you go. I've got the Jags taking an offensive lineman, Brandon Scherff from Iowa, number 2, because the fact of the matter remains is for the moment, Blake Bortles is who they're going to be building a franchise around. As a result, they need to help him. And that Jaguars offensive line is terrible, absolutely terrible. Some of you might question why I wouldn't have the Buccaneers taking Mariota or Winston at number 3, and the reason is very simple, is that Lovie Smith is the head coach, and I will take my 9 years of watching the Bears under Lovie Smith and my understanding of Lovie Smith at this moment, at this point in time, to make me a little bit more expert on things pertaining to Lovie Smith than others. I still fully believe, and even reports after the fact kind of validated what I was saying, that Lovie Smith really wanted Aaron Donald from Pittsburgh with the 7th overall pick last year. What happened was I think he got overruled by the general manager who went with Mike Evans. Not that that was a terrible thing, but the Buccaneers are a bad football team, and they don't have an identity on the side of the ball that Lovie Smith needs his team to have an identity on. Because if you're going to win with Lovie Smith as your head coach, you're going to win first and foremost with the defensive side of the football, not the offensive side of the football. And after devoting pretty much the entire 2014 draft to the offensive side of the ball, could you really then sit there and devote more of the 2015 draft to said offensive side of the ball? You look at Leonard Williams, the thought of him next to McCoy in the middle of that Buccaneers defense has to be something that would excite Lovie Smith tremendously, just like bringing in an Aaron Donald in this last draft would have. When you think back to Lovie, his success in Chicago, when his defense was at the best, he had Tommy Harris and Tank Johnson on the inside of his cover 2 scheme at defensive tackle. So there you go. That's just for the time being. And this is, again, a scenario saying that the quarterbacks could drop just a little bit more than people might envision. Speaking of the quarterbacks, I have Mariota going number 4 to the Jets. If you're picking in the top 5 and you're the Jets, you've already given up on Geno Smith. You got to start over. You're going to have a new coach, probably a new general manager. Got to go with Mariota probably because he's a safer pick, even if Winston is potentially the more talented player. I've got the Rams taking Jameis Winston at number 6. I'm a little fearful of Jameis Winston falling under the realm of Jeff Fisher because that didn't work out so well for Vince Young, and there are some similarities from a maturity and mentality standpoint between a Jameis Winston and a Vince Young. So I have my reservations and concerns about Winston playing under Jeff Fisher. With that said, I do think that the Rams would be the type of franchise that would be much more willing to take risk with a Jameis Winston with a top 10 pick because they know they could be a quarterback away from being pretty damn good, but they know until they get that quarterback, they're not going to be very good at all. We've seen that again this year. Winston's that talented guy that could be that Pro Bowl type of quarterback that the Rams really need, that could help them once and for all move on from the disaster that was the Sam Bradford experience. And I've also got Houston taking Connor Cook at number 13, the quarterback from Michigan State. Now, there's a strong belief in me at this point in time that Bill O'Brien might very well want to pursue Brian Hoyer from Cleveland in the offseason to be his quarterback. And I believe that very well could be the case. But if for some reason that didn't happen, I look at Connor Cook. Bill O'Brien would have some familiarity with him from being a head coach at Penn State, coaching in the Big Ten. I would think a Connor Cook would be a guy he would really like and a guy that would fit his system very well. You'll see some other players that have moved up and down my board a little bit. Players that have probably made the biggest moves up the board. Trae Waynes, the corner from Michigan State, I've got going number 9. I've got TJ Clemmings, the offensive tackle from Pittsburgh, going number 11 to Carolina. What else? I've got Gerod Holliman, the safety from Louisville, going number 20 to the Steelers. Those will probably be the most notable guys that you've seen move up my boards. When it comes to Waynes, I think he'll end up being the top corner in this draft, especially because now Peters has gotten himself kicked off of the Washington team. That might drop him out of round 1. Who knows how far that could drop him. When you look at Waynes, this is a guy with the prototype 6'1", 190-pound size, and he can fly. He's got ball skills. I mean, every year you see it with the defensive back. One of them tests out really well at the combine and ends up sliding into the top 10. And a guy like Trae Waynes is the most likely candidate to do so in this next year's draft. When I look at Clemmings from Pittsburgh, here's a guy that, yes, he's playing right tackle for Pitt, but there are going to be certain teams that are going to view him as a left tackle prospect because of his quickness and explosive burst in short areas off the ball. They're going to look at him as a prototype type of finesse left tackle. Somebody will. And I think a team like Carolina, who needs help on the offensive line because they have to protect Cam Newton, might look at a TJ Clemmings and say, you know what? Worst case scenario, we got a really damn good NFL right tackle, but we think he could play left tackle as well. In terms of Holliman, I'm starting to think more and more that he's the second best safety in this draft. Furthermore, a team like Pittsburgh desperately needs secondary help everywhere. Their corners stink. Their safeties stink. So Holliman at that point in time would probably be the best defensive back that they could get their hands on. In terms of players that drop, I'm sorry, I don't see what the big deal is about Cedric Obehi, whatever, from Texas A&M. I still have him going in the first round, but late in the first round. I'm just not seeing it. I just don't get why so many mock drafts and draft sites have him going in the top half of the first round, why so many have him ranked as a top 10 player in this draft. I don't think in any universe in the world is this guy a top 10 player in this draft. I personally just don't get it. I still have concerns about Shalik Calhoun from Michigan State. I think the guy's a good football player. I'm just wondering if he's going to get stuck with that dreaded tweener label, or he's not explosive enough for teams to view him as a 3-4 outside linebacker, but he's not strong enough to be viewed as a 4-3 defensive end. I think he's a guy that could end up dropping as the process goes along. I still think that with Randy Gregory, even though I have him going 14th to New Orleans in this scenario, excuse me, in this scenario. Andrews Pete, the offensive tackle from Stanford. That Stanford offense has really struggled a lot this year, and Pete really hasn't impressed me all that much. He's a guy that could still shoot up boards as the draft process continues along, especially once you start getting to the combine and everything. But at the moment, I've got him dropping a little bit. I think he's still a first-round talent, but I think he's a lower first-round talent as opposed to the top 10 talent I thought he was heading into this season. So again, check out my 2-round mock down below. Let me know what you think. Blast away on me. What the hell? Knock yourselves out.